this should not be that difficult for parents.
No, it shouldn't. And hospitals should be more willing to have teams that are set up to do the work that you're doing.
Yes. Like, I'm cold emailing, I'm like Googling email address, and people are like, how did you get my email or whatever? And it's like, but that, I'm spending my time doing that instead of the precious moments that I might have with her. So this was right around Valentine's Day. So we're talking 2023. They did find evidence in her cerebral spinal fluid. So they're like, yes, this is what's happening. So we get admitted to do the doxorubicin and the ifosfamide. And they were like, with ifosfamide, there is a chance of neurotoxicity. Again, at this point, we're like 9 months into the chemo game. You're told everything under the sun. Hearing loss, infertility. You're like, I'm just signing my life away because I'm trying to save my child. And I'll deal with those things if they happen. Yeah. So again, we're in the hospital. They start the ifosfamide. I think we're on like day 2. And I had gone to work. Ryan was with Brittany, my husband. And I come and he was like, yeah, she's kind of like repeating herself. Like, she's not remembering things. Brittany is a very smart kid. And so we were kind of like telling her things, and then she would ask again. And we're like, so we brought it up, like the nurses, and they're like, well, it could just be, tiredness and things like that. And so I'm like, okay. So I'm with her that night. The child can't settle. She's like restless, but she's sleeping. And so I'm like, all right, we're in a hospital bed. There's the 2 of us. Like, we also had a roommate that was up. And so I'm like, all right, she's just restless. She can't get comfortable. The next morning it continues. And I was like, something's not right. Like, she seems inconsolable, not crying, just like, no, like, oh, I think we're just going to like medicate her to help her get through this, which they can do for some chemos. I guess some kids have like really bad reactions. And so they kind of put them in like a coma to help them get through it. She proceeds to have what appears to be like a seizure right in front of us.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, what is happening? To the point that she like disengaged her port and she's like flailing, like it's almost like an exorcism is happening in front of your eyes. And I was like, what is happening to my child? Out of nowhere. Looks like she's having seizures. And so now we're rushing. They finally get her like stable. We go down to CT. They're like, we don't see anything. They send us up to the PICU, the pediatric ICU. Her tongue is starting to swell. They're trying to intubate her. Like, I don't understand. And so finally they're like, we think she's suffering from the neurotoxicity. And I remember standing in that ICU and I was like, oh my God, we did this to her. And I thought that my child was going to die at that point in February. And they all look at us and I'm like, we chose to do this. We did this to her. And they're like, we're going to treat this. So I start looking up neurotoxicity because I can't help myself. And the only way to treat this, which is what they're telling me at the same time, is with methylene blue. It is this blue medication that turns everything blue. So they're like, we need to treat her with methylene blue. We don't have it here. We have to get it.
And where's the closest?
I don't even remember what they said at that point, but I'm like to me, time is everything. I'm like, my daughter is like, so they keep trying to up medication to stop her from having what appeared to be seizures. And at this point, she gets basically put kind of like in a coma. Her tongue is so swollen. She had been vomiting all over us. We're like watching her, hoping she's not aspirating. I was like, this is it. I can't believe like this is happening. So they finally get the methylene blue and I'm just praying to God. And at the beginning of Brittany's journey, I was very angry. I'm like, how could this happen to my family? Just like any parent, right? Like, I'm not perfect. But again, you're like, why me? Why her? Why? And so I didn't understand. And so this time, standing in the ICU was the first time that I was begging God. I'm like, this cannot be happening. And it took about a day. And finally she started responding and they started preparing us for the worst. They're like, she may not be the same child with the neurotoxicity. Like, it could impact her brain function. And ideally you run this for 72 hours. And at 48 hours, they were like, I think we're going to take her off the methylene blue because she's responding. I was like, why? Like, what's the problem of keeping her on for the 72? And they're like, well, there's nothing, but, and I'm like, so can you just keep her on for the 72 hours?
Yeah, stick with your first plan for once.
So they were like, okay. So they kept her on and she made a full recovery. They were like, she was talking, eating, drinking, everything. And when we got back to like the regular floor, one of the nurses that saw her originally was like, this can't be the same kid. So
So
at that point, her oncologist at Bay State was like, I don't want to try this again. The Connecticut Children's Hospital oncologist was like, I have experienced this. We just need to pre-medicate her and do things at a slower rate. But he's like, we can definitely do this again. And so at that point, we're like, we're out of here. We're taking her to Connecticut Children's because we just feel like
it's the second time he's been nice.
yeah. And we're like, again, we're left with very little options, and like we're trying to save our daughter. So we ended up at Connecticut Children's, which ended up being a complete blessing for those final months for us. And I just had wished that we had been there from the beginning. Again, it may not have changed anything, but
the quality matters too.
Yes. And especially as we were in those final months.
Was Brittany final months in the hospital, or were you able to take her back home?
So that happened in February. They wanted to give her a period to recover. So in March, we transferred to Connecticut Children's. We were going there. They were like, all right, we're going to have her come inpatient and we're going to try the ifosfamide again, but at a lower dose over a longer period of time. We'll pre-medicate her with methylene blue, try to beat this. So this was March. It was
plan.
Yeah. Yep. It was right before my birthday. So I remember we celebrated my birthday ahead of time.
You guys hit all of the Hallmark moments.
It's really sad because going back to when we were told that she had leptomeningeal disease and we were looking at potentially our last Christmas with her, it was so hard. We were treating everything that it may be our last, but hoping it wasn't. But it's like, we can't go into this naively. And so we had like somebody come to the house and take photos around Christmas time as a family so that we could have those. Much as I didn't want to do it, I was like, I will regret if I'm so naive to think that this might not be our last Christmas with her. So we tried to make the best of everything, but it was also so hard to be crying in the background. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't think you said. Oh no, Trinity, right?
Yeah. So Trinity's our older daughter.
How is she doing during all this?
So when everything started happening, I told you how she would have periods where she liked me or liked my husband. It really took a toll on their relationship. They were really close. I mean, they're 12 years apart, but they're sisters, and they had a really amazing bond. And with us always being in the hospital and then Brittany kind of having her things that she's going through, it did put some distance between them. And when Brittany was home, she wanted me or Brian. And so I think it was hard for my daughter to see that. She also couldn't come to Boston with us because she was in school. Yeah, she was a junior in high school. So it's like, she can't miss that. But she was also at that age with 16, like we talked with her openly about things. And she was like, I understand. She did understand, she would visit us in Boston, and we were very thankful for that. But also she wanted to be a normal kid, and
she should be.
Yeah. So it was hard because when we transferred to Connecticut, they tried the phosphomide again, and we had the same experience back in the ICU, back in like a coma. And thankfully we were like, hey, you need to up it to this. This is like to stop it from happening. And they listened. They were like, okay, like if we trust you, which was phenomenal.
And they seemed more proactive in the family together than just treating a patient and moving on.
Yeah. And what's crazy is like, we didn't know about Connecticut Children's. They are just like Boston Children's. They have all of their own imaging for the kids. They have private rooms for the whole oncology floor. Like, it was just something that we were like, we wish that we had known ahead of time. But with that, even though we knew that we could treat this neurotoxicity, they got her a turnaround quicker. I think it was like 24 hours, and she was back to like herself. But then we started noting some like lethargy, and they did some imaging, and she had developed hydrocephalus, so increase of fluid in the brain. And
because of the medicine.
Yeah, I think because of the medicine, but also I think because of the cancer, because it's in the cerebral spinal fluid at this point.
So it was choking off the
So at that point, we were still in the ICU. They're like, we're going to watch it. They were trying to give her like medication to flush the body of fluid to help with that. And then in the middle of the night, they were like, we're taking her to the OR. We need to drain it, like release it and put a shunt in.
Yeah. I'll be worried about.
So that's when things started to just feel like we couldn't get our footing anymore. They took her in. They did it. They said as soon as they tapped in, it like they couldn't even measure the pressure. That's how much fluid was in there. They tried to measure it when it comes out, and they said they couldn't even measure it. They put a shunt in, and they're like, we have to watch it for a few days, otherwise she's gonna need like a permanent shunt all the way down. So we were also in the talks of ifosfamide's not working. The next option is to do an Omaya reservoir. So it's a port on your head that goes directly into your cerebral spinal fluid. They were like, that's probably the best shot, is to go directly into the spinal fluid with etoposide. And so they're like, we're already going in to do one surgery. Do you want us to just put the Omaya in? But the thing that we appreciated about Connecticut Children's was like this doctor, like we felt just was on our team. Like Brian and I would ask questions. We were like, not to say that anybody made us like feel stupid, but we just felt like so heard. I had always told Brian, I was like, our other oncologist, I was like, I just don't think he likes me. Not that he has to like me, but I was like, I just feel like there's like this, I don't know, tension, friction. Like, so this doctor was completely different. Like we could ask anything and he would be like, have an answer, or be like, I'll look into that. Or I'm not aware of that. Let me read up on it.
Even when you know time is short, it's just nice to have people around you who don't make you feel worse in the moment.
Yeah. Like, we're just parents trying to save our daughter. So we're looking up things on the internet, clinical trials, and,
Which is not healthy either.
It's not healthy, but it's also like you're scraping at the bottom of the barrel for anything. And so this doctor was incredible. And so we did that, and we thought that was working, just because, she was still, you're telling me my child's going to die and she's running around and she, is active and talking and stuff. And so then in April, right before Easter, we were at the house, we were eating. All of a sudden, Brittany just like went kind of like catatonic and then threw up. And we're like, oh, okay, she must have just choked on something. She wasn't really talking. We proceeded to go about our day thinking like, okay, she's just having a thing. And then it started to kind of continue, and we're like, what's happening? Call, and they're like, maybe she's having a seizure. So then she started having seizures, which was an implication of the cancer spreading. And we ended up back in the ICU in Connecticut. They ended up putting her on 4 anti-seizure meds. Seizures were still breaking through. They were like, we are considering putting her in a coma just to get them to stop. They're like, we're going to try one more med if it doesn't work. And witnessing the neurotoxicity and then seizure, like, it's so traumatizing, and you're so helpless. And she's just this little, probably not even 50 pounds. And you're just trying to help her. And again, I sat there and I was like, this can't be happening. Begging God, like, I just want to hear her voice again. Thankfully, the 5th medication worked, and a few days went by, and I got to hear her say like, Mom. And so again, like, I struggle a lot with my faith, but these are 2 very big instances where I was sitting there in the ICU just like begging God, and he did give me these miracles. He didn't give me the one I wanted with Brittany surviving and beating all of this, but I can't deny these situations.
Yeah.
So we finally got her like stabilized. We end up another week in the ICU. We end up coming home. We're on like 5 different anti-seizure medications. We're just like, okay, we're still trucking along. Like, we're still doing this. And so Brittany's birthday was May 27th. So we were planning, we didn't really get to do a birthday party for her 4th. It was really hard for this 5th one. So we took to social media and we're like, hey, if people want to send her birthday cards, like, can't really do a party. She's in and out of the hospital. She loved it. We got over 4,000 like birthday cards, and she loved it. opening them. And
That's awesome.
we, yeah, like we would take them to the hospital, and, you know, people had drawings and stickers, and
That's the side of social media I love.
yeah, it was truly incredible. Like people sent gifts. Like we didn't ask for gifts. The goal was we were trying to get a birthday card from every state. You know,
Oh,
like that was the fun thing, and we
sounds like
did.
you did that.
Yeah, we did, and we got from I think like 6 other countries as well. But it was like so much joy for her. Like I have photos of her and I going to the PO box and just
Oh,
bins full of cards, and she was just so excited. So it was like the day of her birthday. We were happy, like, okay, we're gonna celebrate her birthday. She's sitting on the couch. She's not she's like under a heated blanket because she was getting cold, and she starts like talking, and she's just not making sense. And I was like, I hate to do this, but I'm like, something is just not right. And it's her birthday, and I don't want to be going to the hospital, but like something's not right. She's just not making sense. Like she's not grasping that she's home. So we call, and they're like, bring her in. So we go in, and they ended up admitting us. I don't remember why. There wasn't like a big thing as like, but they're like, we're just going to admit you for like kind of observation type of thing. So we get up there, and we're like, okay, like it sucks, like it's your birthday, but like when we get home, we'll do the celebration. And we're in the room, and all of a sudden she just goes like catatonic again, and her face turns bright red and like not breathing. And I'm like, so we pull the alarm, everybody comes in, they do oxygen, she ends up recovering, and they're like, we think she had a deep brain seizure. Like, so they start putting EEGs back on her, and this is when everything just started to crumble. We never left the hospital after that
how long was
with her.
on her birthday? She got
So on her birthday, she had a deep brain seizure.
5 then.
Yeah, yep. She had just that she was turning 5. So she like recovered from that, but then things just started to go. It's like it's so rapid, like I can't even explain it. And so they're like, we're gonna do imaging. We had already planned to do imaging. Everybody thought that the imaging was gonna show like improvement. Even her oncologist was like, he was just shocked. He was like, I don't understand. And then it just landslide. She just kept having more seizures. She ended up losing the ability to move her left side. I remember we were in the hospital too, and she had fallen asleep, and she woke up, and she was like, I died. And I was like, no, like you just took a nap. And I was like, why would she say that? And then inevitably, you know, we get to a few days later. But yeah, she basically, like, the cancer it was so fast. Like she couldn't move her left side. She had this thing where she would rub our eyebrows or her own eyebrow for like comfort since she was a baby. I remember getting one more eyebrow rub from her. And we were told the imaging showed like it progressed. There was nothing more we could do. We were trying to get her home. That's a whole nother story, is if you have ever heard of hospice. If you have ever heard of hospice for kids, it's like non-existent.
Yeah.
So we were in a different state. They're like to get you home, we need to take an ambulance. Even to get you set up at home, we're like, okay, like it's laughable what they think would be considered hospice for a kid. They're like, basically, we're gonna send you home, and she's like gonna starve to death because we're not gonna do, like, they didn't want to put a feeding tube in, and and we're like, are you fucking kidding me? And I've heard it from other parents too, which is just, it's horrible. At that point, it had gotten to the point where we were like, she was having seizures still. They were doing like emergency meds. We're like, I don't even know if she'll make it home through the ambulance. And I was like, I would be devastated if something happened and my husband's in the car behind us. So we stayed at Connecticut Children's, and the day that she ended up passing, it was around 4 or 5 o'clock. And they were just like, they could tell it was happening. And so my husband and I were in the bed with her, and she couldn't move. She couldn't even hold up her own head at that point. And so you're laying there with her, and her entire team came in, her oncologist, everybody was with us. And, you know, you're just sitting there, and you're watching your child die, helpless, and telling them it's okay, because you don't want them to be suffering or
scared.
Or scared. Meanwhile, you're dying inside. Yeah. So she ended up passing in our arms, and our lives were forever fractured at that point. Half of us going with her and dying with her, and the other half having to walk out of a hospital without our daughter. So we had to go home, and our older daughter wasn't there. Nobody knew that it was coming at this point. We knew that days were limited, but she had come and visited, and I think at that point it was really hard for her. Again, she's in school. How do you tell your other child that your child is dying? Like, we were like, no, like, you need to come soon. And I also didn't want to do it over the phone, so we drove home from Connecticut, and there had been like wildfires in Canada. Driving home, and the sky's like gray, and all you can smell is these wildfires. So I remember we get in, and we hadn't told her we were coming home. So she hears the garage door, and we're walking in, and she's looking at us, and we're like, she's gone. And I remember, I think I made one phone call, because I was like, I don't want to talk to anybody. I think I called like my sister, and I was like, Brittany passed. I don't want to talk to anybody. So
call everyone for me.
Yeah, like, do what you will with that. And I remember getting into my shower, sitting in my tub and just screaming, crying, and then going to bed. And then waking up the next day being like, that had to be a nightmare. This can't be my life.
And how's your husband?
The same. Like, we both were just like dumbfounded. So our older daughter is not his biological daughter. So Brittany was like his he loves her unconditionally, but it was like, this was like from an infant. Like, he held Brittany for the first time. He was just devastated, and like you had said earlier, like he felt his job was to protect her, and he felt like he failed.
You guys don't fail. You just
no, but it's just that the nature of it, right? Like, that's just not.
You need to blame and have a way to deal with it. So self-inflicting, it's usually the easiest way.
Yes. I mean, it's been 3 years since Brittany passed, and it took me a good 2 years to get out of the spiral of like, this is my fault. I did something. I missed something. I caused this. I should have done this, and I didn't, because it's just not logical. It's not natural. Like, kids dying is not natural.
No, it should definitely not be. It should definitely not be. But I mean, I don't know if it helps. Everything that all of you thought was all natural, because it's what people go through. I mean, my cousin still can't mention her father or mother's name, and it's been years. My uncle still, 35 years later, still can't mention my mom's name. Like, if I bring it up, it's like out the door. And I'm like, there's no one else that knew her. I don't know.
It's so sad. Like,
it's like, but people have a different way of grieving and handling things, and some people just don't deal with things at all. Like, I dealt with life how I dealt with life. If I had to break down and like have a moment, because I never had a moment where because I was 11 when my mom was diagnosed.
mm-hmm.
I was 14 when my father and my sister were killed. So then my mom's cancer came back within that week, because she was part of what happened. And I was 14 now, taking care of my mom, whose cancer was like back with a vengeance. And 3.5 years later, I buried her.
Yeah, and that's something like you having to grow up essentially and like become this caregiver, and that is just life altering too. And so it's really unfortunate when you have family that grieves differently, or like you can't communicate or talk about those our loved ones. Like, I couldn't imagine. Like, my husband relied a lot on me because of my like medical knowledge, and so the doctors would explain stuff, and then he'd be like, can you explain it to me? And so I started to feel a little bit of pressure too, because I'm like, I'm not, like, I'm doing the best I can. I don't want him to reject me.
Not your specialty. Cancer is a whole different language within
Yeah.
the weird language of medical field anyways.
And I'm like, I'm just like, this is the way that and again, like you have to read between the lines. And like, yeah, I'm very thankful that my husband and I are together. We actually,
Or stronger, it sounds like.
we both handled the initial grief the same, where we were like, we don't want to talk to anybody. We don't want to see anybody. We want to sit and we want to feel everything that we are feeling. We didn't turn TVs on. We didn't like go on social media. We didn't have drinks or anything. Like, sat in our house and we cried the whole time and just was like, this sucks. We can't believe this. We planned her funeral. We got through that. And then we both had like an additional month off of work. Our jobs were fantastic to support us. And we just sat in our house. First thing that we ever watched was Game of Thrones.
I thought it was going to be the movie that she loved.
No, I was like, my husband's like, okay, we got through the funeral. He's like, we need to do something. And I'm like, I don't care. I have no desire to do anything. And so he's like, he had already watched Game of Thrones. He's like, do you want to watch Game of Thrones? I'm like, okay, fine. We would wake up and watch episodes of Game of Thrones all day. Like, that's what we would do to just like get through
the day.
Yeah, just escape. And then it was dealing with family that, like, you know, we love our family. We definitely had fallouts with some friends and family that I think grief and child loss, again, it's not natural child loss, and so people don't know how to handle that. And they also are like,
and cancer still scares the shit out of everyone still to this day.
Yeah. But the grief in general, like we had people that it's like they couldn't comprehend what we were doing and like taking the time for ourselves and like not doing things and like setting up boundaries. And like that wasn't comfortable for some people.
They couldn't handle you wanting your space.
Or like, yeah, not like just being like, no, we're not available. Like we're just like, we're barely surviving.
And they weren't the right friends.
And it's like, I don't know about you, but I know there's a lot of other cancer parents and bereaved parents that I've talked to. And like, when your child dies, you want to die too.
Yeah.
Like you are, I would be lying if I didn't say like we hadn't thought of suicide, right? Because it's like, you're just like, this is not how life is supposed to be. Like, how, like it's that much pain and pressure and just like, you're just like, I can't do this. And, you know, and then it's like you get people with all the placating of like, they don't know what to say and they're trying to be nice and like, but they're like, oh, you know, I can't imagine, or at least you have another kid. And we're like, that's replace Brittany. Or if it was me, like I would die. And we're like, oh, so you don't think that we care enough about Brittany because we're still here? Like we're not even living. We're just like surviving. Yeah, but we entered into grief therapy about 2 weeks after Brittany passed. I was like, we need a therapist.
That's shocking. Shocking good, because a lot of people wait.
No, I was like, I need a therapist. Like, I can't process this. Like, we need to go to therapy. So we found a grief counselor who was fantastic. We saw him for almost 2 years, and it was so helpful because we would go together, and it was just, and I highly say this to a lot of bereaved parents because, again, we weren't offered, when Brittany was diagnosed, we weren't offered any counseling. We weren't offered any type of like mental health assistance. Like, yes, you get a social worker, but that's to help you with like bills and all sorts of stuff. And yes, we have like a nurse advocate and stuff. There is no mental support for the parents. You're being told your child has cancer. You need to be a doctor at home, a nurse, an advocate. You need to do everything under the sun and still function and maybe go to work if one of your jobs doesn't allow you time off, care for another child. Yeah, so you just do it all. And then when your child dies, again, you're not offered any type of counseling support or anything like that. Like, you're just being like, here you go, back into the world. You've had all of these interactions with doctors and nurses, and your whole world has been like...
Yeah, and then it just stops.
All of this, and then it just stops. So yeah, we ended up in therapy, and it was, I tell any family, I'm like, I understand, like, it may be too soon. I highly recommend it, because I don't know where we would be without it.
Because therapy could also be so different for so many different people that, and sometimes it sounds like you got lucky. Sometimes I think people also need to know. You sometimes might have to see 3-4 different people before you find the right match.
Yes.
But don't give up, because it sounds like you got lucky with that. Again, you got 2 lucky ones at the end. The good one that helped you through when you needed
it. You needed something at this point after all of Brittany's, like, getting knocked down every time, so.
I do want to ask one question, and sorry to go backwards a little with you, but I do want to know, just because maybe it's helpful for other mothers and fathers. When Brittany was in those last several months of like going back and forth more and more, were you having these real life conversations with her, or had you decided to just not give that other side of the information to her?
So Brittany was 4. My husband and I were very different in the fact of I told you I'm a planner. I look at every possible scenario. And so I was living in 2 worlds in terms of like, she's going to beat this, and what if she doesn't?
You have to
And
plan.
like taking the photos and things like that. And my husband was adamant that he was not going there. Like he was like, I'm not doing that. It's not happening. And so I said, okay, like we still were a team, but I was looking at it without blinders on in a sense. And so, but what do you say to a 4-year-old? We did start going to church.